Welcome to Loud and Clear, a program geared toward the younger generations. You can listen in every Thursday at 7 p.m. or find the plug to our YouTube channel on kgtcradio.com.
Hey, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Carlos.
And welcome to Loud and Clear. So we are going to talk about a few things today. This is a new program, and specifically for the youth and young adult. But we're going to share a few things. We're going to go ahead with our thoughts of the week, which we're just going to share some funny moments, something that happened this week. We're going to then get into some real issues, and then lastly, end out with a question of the week from somebody who's listening or one of our teens. Starting off, one of our teens they're going to be the ones posing the question. But if you want to ask a question, you can ask that at vcfrevivalyouth@gmail.com. I believe that is correct. That is correct. So if you want to email us, again, vcfrevivalyouth@gmail.com. You can send in a question or something that you would like to hear us talk about on the program, and we'd be happy to get to that. Loud and clear on the subject line. Sorry, I just totally spaced for a second what my wife was trying to tell me. So yeah, loud and clear on the subject line in the email, and then we will get that and we will talk about it in one of the programs. So, Carlos, you said you had a highlight of your week, something that happened to you that was kind of funny. I wanted to give you the room.
I did, actually. So I was trying to be a handyman, and if you know me, I'm not. I'm no expert. I work at a building supply, and I don't know a whole lot about building. Anyways, so my wife wanted me to build her a couple, planter boxes because, she wants to do that kind of stuff. And so me trying to do it, trying to be the handyman, I go out there to do it with my two sons, and I go to, drill a couple boards together, do the manly thing. And as soon as I go to bend down, my pants rip from seriously from the crotch all the way to the back, and I'm exposed. And my son looks at me and goes, "Poor daddy." And I just was like, you know what? That's just the way it goes. And so that was my highlight of the week. Funny moment. It was embarrassing to say the least, but thank God nobody was there besides my kids.
That's a real moment with your kids.
Oh, it was a real moment.
That's a transparent moment with your kids.
They'll never forget it.
Yeah.
And I won't either.
That's awesome. Yeah, we are definitely in the ministry place. I feel like we don't, I feel like Pastor Randy wouldn't mind me saying this. He's not necessarily a handyman. That's not our forte.
Not a VCF.
Yeah, give us a microphone, give us something in the ministry circle, and we'll do our best under the Lord. But yeah, we try to be a handyman, but I'm not a construction expert. I will say that. But yeah, this week has been an interesting one. I don't know. We were all at church. This will definitely date this, and I know we're not really supposed to date this, but we had a water outage at the church, and the bathrooms did not work this week. But I came here, and I think the water was still working, and I went into the bathroom, and the thing was full of toilet paper. The toilet was full. Oh, so man. I was sitting there for probably I don't even know, man, probably 10, 15 minutes just going to town with the plunger on that sucker. And I was trying to get it unclogged. So I went over because I had a suspicion it was one of our teens. I don't know why, but I had a suspicion it was one of our teens.
That has teenager written all over it.
It does. So I kind of gave the teenagers a little bathroom etiquette. And I know this might just be TMI for the radio. I don't even know, but just kind of when you're going to the bathroom, just flush every once in a while.
Yeah,
it might be a good idea. Keep the stuff moving. So, but anyway, so that was my moment of this week. That was oh my gosh, but it's been a good week nonetheless. We had just I don't know. It's been good. So we kind of want to get into some real issues here, and not necessarily a real issue this week because this is our intro episode. So we just kind of want to talk about ourselves a little bit, not in a because we love ourselves or anything like that. But but just because we want to kind of share our testimony with you, hopefully you'll get to know us a little bit. I am the youth pastor for Orville campus here. Me and my wife, Melanie, we youth pastor here, and Pastor Carlos and Ashley, youth pastor down for the OMAC campus. And so that's been going real well. I feel like I visited a couple times and spoke for you guys, and I'm really impressed with your guys' teens and just their hunger for the Lord. And I really feel like there's a lot of, if you're a teen listening to this, I think the lie is that you're not interested, but I think you are. I think you want freedom in your life, and you want to know true peace, and you want to know Jesus, and you want to have power and not just be in the mundane and the just go with the motions. So my life started out, I was raised in Orville, Washington, and I went to elementary school here, high school here. I had an amazing family. My uncle is the pastor of this church, Randy McAllister, and my parents have always been a part of this church, serving in ministry, doing various things. And so I was just kind of raised here, just kind of was around. I went to, obviously went to Orville High School and everything. And I think that my testimony was that I got saved at a young age. I always knew that God had a call to ministry, to pastoring of some sort. And I just knew that was where my life was headed at a very young age. But I struggled through life, struggled through high school years, struggled with girls, stuff like that. I didn't really struggle necessarily with alcohol, drugs, things of that nature, but definitely struggled in a lot of different areas, and also just kind of how to be bold about my faith. And I was kind of shy at times, but then other times, I would stand up, but I struggled through that, and I look back, and there's times where I can see that maybe I didn't make the impact that I should have, but also I did at the same time. Yeah. And for teens, just trying to encourage you, if you're a teen out there, that yes, I was in that place. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to maybe be set apart, maybe to stand out or whatever, but at the same time, you just feel shy and secure, and you don't want to stir the waters at all. And as much as I love the Lord, that was where I had the issue, is stirring the waters and being on fire for the Lord in that way. But I struggled through some stuff. I always kind of just thought that I was just always there. I was just always like, oh, that's just Nathan. He's been here for forever. He's whatever. And that was my battle throughout high school. And God really began to deal with me to just be consistent. And I stayed here. I didn't go off to college or anything like that. I stayed here, and me and my wife picked up ministry. I got married a couple years after high school. And that's just kind of been where we've landed, and we've always been, and we can obviously get more into life stuff as we go along with this program, but and hopefully I can share some of the trials that we've been through. But Carlos, do you want to kind of just share a little bit about yourself? And
yeah, absolutely. So I spent most of my younger years in Wenatchee and part of Mexico. I was in foster care most of my younger age, and so, just the battles that come along with that, the voices that come along with not having your biological mother and your father with you. And so I bounced around, had a lot of issues, just anger. I battled with anger a lot, just not knowing why things happen at such a young age and not being able to really digest those things. And so, but when I got into foster care in Wenatchee, all the homes that we went to were all Christian homes, and that's really the first time I really experienced God. But it was, you knew they were Christian homes, but it wasn't I feel like there's the label Christianity, and then there's people that actually love God. Mm-hmm. And I was in a Christian home. They were obviously, they I feel like they loved God, but it wasn't something they talked about. It was just kind of they had, they were morally right, and and they attended church on Sundays. And so I didn't have any of those crazy experiences of going to these crazy homes. But and then I got adopted when I turned 10 with some of my siblings in Orville. And so I've spent the last 15 years living in Orville and attending Valley Christian Fellowship. And so, my battles really were, the biggest one I would say was anger. That's something that I really struggled with growing up. And it took a long time for God to really deal with those things. And so if you're dealing with anger, I just want to say, be patient with yourself and be patient with God. It's hard, but God's bigger. And so just kind of keep pressing on and continue to love God. And I would say another one of my big issues, I would say was just, kind of like you were saying, when I really encountered God, probably when I was 10, that's when I really began to take God seriously for the first time. But I wasn't one of those people that experienced God and then from there on I was on fire. Yeah. Like I would kind of go off and on, I feel like a lot of people do that, especially at a young age. You kind of like you experience God, then you're on fire, and then you kind of go back and forth. It's like this slow fade, and that was really my life as a teenager and through high school. I would experience God. I was always sensitive to God. Like when I was in church, I was sensitive to the Spirit and the moving, and so God would touch my life, and then before I knew it, I was right back to doing worldly things and hanging out with people that I shouldn't. And so that was my life as well. In high school, I wasn't really known for being a Christian guy. I doubt anybody knew I attended church on a regular basis, but I did. But I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to be all these things that young people want to do. Yeah. And so, and with that came, I didn't do like crazy drugs, but just to fit in, I would smoke pot or drink or do the things that made me look cool, And so I struggled a little bit with that, but mainly being a leader, I think, was the biggest thing. I did lead, but I wasn't leading anywhere good. And so I think the biggest area, I think that's like my testimony, I would sum it up with just saying, like God had to deliver me from anger, first of all, but then like this program is called Loud and Clear, but I think like God is really had to deal with me being loud and clear about my faith and who I am and who God has called me to be. And I think, for all you people listening, that's what we need in this day and age, is to be loud and clear about our faith, to be loud and clear about who Jesus is and what he's done in our lives, because we all have a story. Yeah. We all have a testimony. But to be loud and clear about those things, because people need to understand that they're not alone. They need to understand that God can turn ashes into beauty, and God can still use you regardless of what you've been through or what you've gone through or the decisions that you've made, that God is bigger than all that stuff. And so I'm just grateful to be here, and I'm grateful for what God has brought me through. Yeah. Everybody's testimony is so personal and so beautiful. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. And so what would you say is your earliest memory of coming here?
Well, when I first, as you know, because you've been here your whole life, Kid City, when we had it still in town, I just remember getting dropped off and there was, like I said, I had gone to churches prior to Valley Christian Fellowship, but there wasn't like, unless you know what I'm talking about, it's hard to explain it. But you can walk into a church and it's just like four walls and a roof, right?
True, yeah.
But then you can walk into a church and you can feel the love of God. Yeah. You can feel the presence of God. You can feel like genuine love, the love of God. And I think, just like there was something about walking into Valley Christian Fellowship where you just, our slogan or whatever you want to call it is a place to belong. Yeah. And it's like, that's so genuine to what we are. You walk in and you feel not just from the people, but like there's just a atmosphere that is set here where it's like you feel like you belong here. You feel the presence of God. And so I think it was so, even at 10, like I knew that feeling of like, this is a place where I want to be. Yeah. Like I know that God is here. I know that the love of God is here. And so I think it was just more of that feeling of like knowing like this is a place where I can be. This is a place where, where God is. And I think that's where like I really experienced who God really was, because before then it was just, here's the Bible and here's rules and you follow them, Yeah. Whereas definitely. Now it's like, okay, God wants a relationship with me. And so I think that was kind of the first time I really experienced who God is as opposed to just rules and regulations.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've always thought about our church like, I'll say that's one thing I've never questioned is like the love of God
Mm-hmm.
that's come from whether it be our ministers here or whatever, or the ministry that's been done here. I've never questioned that.
Yeah.
I've always felt that. I've always thought about our church, and the thought that comes to my mind is beautifully chaotic.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Yes.
if anything,
Yeah.
I think we're so chaotic and in a good way,
Yeah.
and like it doesn't matter where you are, where you've been. You look at some of the people that are serving in ministry where they were like 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, whoa, God has done amazing things, but at the same time, it's like, wow, that's crazy.
It is crazy,
That we've
yes.
had people that have come out of life of drugs or, just crazy backgrounds, and look at where they are now.
Yeah,
look
exactly.
what they're doing now.
Exactly.
And so it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, never once have I questioned the love of God here. And I remember I remember like little glimpses of like us in Kid City.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
I remember a lot at like your guys' place with the pool and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was some of the big memories and some of the youth outings that we did.
Yeah.
But man, when we were in youth group, I feel like we were running all over the place doing like youth rallies and stuff like that. Did you go to the youth rallies down in Riverside?
I did.
Oh, we did
Yes.
those? Yeah. Okay.
Good times.
Yeah. And apparently my wife was there, and I didn't even know she was
That's so
there.
crazy.
She was on the same bus that we were on.
Which
when we went down there.
It's weird because like I obviously went to school with Melanie,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like I never remember the first time I saw her walk into the church. I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And then I'm sure she was probably like, "What?"
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's not how I lived my life. I didn't
Yeah.
live my life
Yeah.
like I went to church, and so I'm sure it was probably like, "Who's this guy?"
Yeah, it was
So-
a little crazy. And I never met her but I knew her family. Obviously, I've known Pastor Vern for forever.
Yeah.
But had no idea they were related. Had no idea that Melanie existed until after I graduated, which was probably a good thing. We probably should actually have Melanie on here, but to talk about that. But anyway, that's more personal life stuff. But yeah, I think it's so cool because I feel like you do have that, where you were. I think there was more like charisma from you.
Yeah.
Like throughout high school and stuff, and obviously your personality. Like I remember just thinking you and your brother were so funny, and like growing up, and just like there's a lot of passion.
Yeah.
That I would see, and I would see that, and I think that sometimes you do if you are outgoing in high school, or if you have that, even if it's a mask, like you have this where you're passionate and you got a personality, and people find you funny, and you've got people are attracted to that. But then also brings so many challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
For standing up for God and getting tempted to go other ways. And I don't know if you're a teen and maybe you find yourself in that camp, or you find yourself in the other camp to where you're like, kind of like where I was, to where it's like, I felt like I still obviously struggled and did things that I shouldn't have done. But I felt like nobody really knew,
Yeah.
and I felt like I was pretty shy. And I think I avoided a lot of things because I did fly under the radar a lot, and I was super, I seemed consistent. Obviously, again, I had my struggles, but I think I just flew under that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a level to where you are not going to be perfect at 13 years old.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You are going to have emotions and things that are going to try to pull you from the left to the right, and you're going to want to fit in. You just are. But how do you stand firm? How do you be set apart? But don't sacrifice your boldness,
Yeah.
And like, that's something that I always think about. Do you feel like you ever had a season throughout high school to where you felt like you were really close with God?
I do. I feel like I had periods, like especially when we like go to a youth conference, and obviously like youth conferences are amazing, right? You go and you experience God, and you're around people your age who are there for the same reason, to worship God. And so I had like, I'd go probably weeks where I think like I was trying my hardest to be really close to God, and I would kind of back away from doing certain things or talking certain ways. But I think, without having a constant relationship with God, and I'm talking about, a dedicated prayer time and a dedicated time where, you're reading your Bible. I didn't really have those moments in high school where I was like consistently pursuing God. And that was obviously a big part of my issue. Yeah. Looking back, is that I wasn't pursuing God. And so, as much as he was pursuing me, I kind of had my back turned towards him a lot of the time. And so, But I had times in my life where I tried my hardest to represent God in a good way, but I just, without really knowing him, because I wasn't pursuing him, I didn't really know how to reflect who he was, away from just rules and regulations again. I was kind of like, okay, you don't talk this way, you don't make these kind of jokes, you don't do this and you don't do that, and so when God's so much deeper than that, God wants relationship. Before you understand God, you see the Bible as just that. It's just rules and do's and don'ts.
It's true.
But really, when you begin to dig in, when you begin to actually pursue God, you see that it's a relationship. And it's not that we don't do things. It's not like I'm telling myself, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that. It's that there's something inside of me now that doesn't want to do that because I love God. I just know those things aren't healthy for me anymore. And so I don't do those. It's not a rule. It's not a regulation that God has on me. It's just when you're born again, when you're changed, your nature is not to do those things anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think in high school, I just didn't know those things, not because God wasn't showing me, but again, because I wasn't pursuing him. And so to me, it was just rules and regulations. And so if I was not cussing or not talking a certain way, I was quote unquote close to God in those moments.
Yeah. No, and I get that. I do feel like conferences and stuff, because I think because we had that seed planted.
Yeah.
I think that whenever we had an amazing youth rally or amazing conference or something like that, we jumped on the wagon.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're like, this is what we want to see happen.
Yeah.
Like, we want to see people get saved. We want everybody to love the Lord and all this different stuff. But we weren't the ones that were necessarily going to pioneer that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that creating like a youth generation of like being loud and clear about their faith and pioneering that moving forward, I think that's what we're here for now, because we walked through it. Like you walked through, you're an amazing testimony to these teens just because of what you've walked through. Because we can look back at that. It was a little bit long ago now.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't seem that long ago, but
further away. But yeah, it was. But we can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
From different perspectives, and so that's the reason why I also love that we kind of go back and forth. Like, you speak for us, and you guys, and we've been honored when you guys ask us to speak down there too, and kind of exchange a little bit. I think it's always good to have variety too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so we have, we're running out of time, but we have a question here for this week, and I'm going to read it because it was texted in to us, and it's kind of, so this is if you were an onion, what kind of onion would you describe yourself as?
I put some thought into this because...
Because I told him ahead of time.
And I'm glad that you told me ahead of time, because I don't know what I would have said if I hadn't have been warned. But, I was thinking, and I think I'd probably describe myself as a green onion.
A green onion, okay.
Because, I think green onion, I think fancy, right? I think,
sure.
You're putting it on top. You're salt baying that.
Okay.
You're kind of you're putting a little Riz on it, like you're, the green onion is the Riz of onions, like it just is, right?
It's true. So, it really is.
Like,
I didn't even think of that.
I don't know. I like being fancy. I like dressing up. I like nice things, and so I was like, you know what? Plus, a green onion's good on anything. Like, it's peak.
Okay,
like, it's a good onion, right?
Okay, yeah.
But it doesn't have like that super strong oniony taste, but it's just perfect. And so I would say a green onion for myself.
Okay, yeah. You know those onions that they ate in holes? They were like, when they're up on top of the mountain and they just like grab it out of the dirt.
Eating it like an apple.
And then they eat it like an apple. And they're like, that onion, I don't know why. When I watched that, I wanted to grab one of those onions. I thought that was going to probably taste so good. But now that I'm older and I've had onions, obviously I know. But still, it's like they say it's the sweetest onion, whatever. I'd say I want to be that onion. I don't know if I am that onion, but I want to be that onion.
You're pretty sweet.
Yeah,
I'd say you're pretty sweet.
Thanks. I'm pretty sweet. But yeah, ending on that note, thank you guys so much for listening to this, and I hope this was encouraging. I'm excited to see where this goes. We're just gonna have fun with this, because I think that we also have to model
absolutely,
like life. Like we have joy. We love the Lord, and
plus God has a sense of humor.
Absolutely.
Just look at people's noses. Everybody's got a different nose.
Yeah, look at mine. No, but thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you guys next time on Loud and Clear.